How's it going, guys? Earlier today we saw Argentina make history and come back from the greatest deficit that they've ever had to come back from, and we saw Scotland get booed off at Murrayfield, which is something you don't really see happen. Something's going on here. I want to break this game down and would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Is Scotland being mismanaged? Let me know. Let's get into this game. So Scotland were 21-0 up at the from the first half. We saw tries from Ashman, who absolutely dominated, and Scotland were in the front seat. It was their game to lose. But honestly, looking at how Scotland played, they did not prepare well. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the thought process was in terms of Scotland, because they went without Tom Jordan. They went without George Horn. Why would you not bring them on when you are struggling? Why would you only bring on your substitutions late in the second half? Why would you only give Duhan van der Merwe 16 minutes of the game? The last 16 minutes of the game. Why would you do that? Where we saw Argentina make necessary changes, brilliant changes early on when they were needed. They started to see a sinking ship and they made the necessary changes. That we saw 5 players replaced on the 45th minute. So I want to break this. I want to take it step by step, and let's crack on from there. So Malia, 4th minute, as we see, things already weren't going very well for Argentina from the outlet. Dempsey bags himself a try, showing just how strong he is, converted by Finn Russell. Ewan Ashman gets 2 tries on the 27th minute and then the 43rd minute, a couple minutes into the second half. Now, Ewan Ashman was really dominant here. He showed his ball carrying ability. He showed how strong he is, how he's just a physical specimen of a human being. So, like I say, Scotland were really, really on the front foot here until Blair Kinghorn ended up getting himself that yellow. And this is where things really, really started to change, because things really, really started to change. I forget the player's name. I think it was number 21. He ended up making the craziest line break, and that completely caught Scotland off guard. And this was in the build-up to Montoya's try, where they started to put on that pressure. They started to break down. They started to play face play. They kept getting Scotland to that try line, and every single time they got Scotland to that try line, things were happening. Scotland just couldn't keep them out. They just couldn't keep them out. I do agree with the referees in terms of Montoya's try. He was in control of it at all times. I do believe that was a try. But like I said, prior to this, we had 5 changes happen, and we saw Santi Carreras come on. That was a big moment, right? He ended up changing the game. He started to be that general. He started to dictate play, and when you have someone like Santi Carreras come on, he starts to create wonders. Argentina saw that there was a sinking ship. They made the necessary changes, and they started to make things happen. These changes came 2 minutes after Ewan Ashman bagged himself his second try, and this is where we really started to see the game shift, because Isgro then powered through to bag himself a try in the 59th minute, and thankfully it was up against someone like Finn Russell, because he knocked Finn Russell into another universe. It looked like Finn Russell didn't know what planet he was on at points, but if this was up against like a Pierre Schoeman, there's no way Isgro was getting past him. But luckily, it was Finn Russell. Good power, good pace, bagged himself a try. But then things really started to get even worse, because although Finn Russell did manage to bag himself another penalty goal, bringing it up to 24-12, Pedro Rubiolo again at the try line, showing that power, that intensity that Scotland really, really struggled to keep up with. Pablo Matera, again, the guy is just a absolute bull, taken to the try line again. And again, Scotland are having to defend on their try line. They just cannot keep the Argentinians out when they are at that try line, and it happens again. Matera bundles through for a try just before Picardo ends up breaking through on the left. There's nothing that they can do. Hold strong. Even with a player hanging off of him, he still manages to bundle over and bag himself a try to end the game and just kind of seal it, winning 33-24. This was the biggest deficit that that Argentina have ever had to come back from. You got to imagine at halftime it was 21-0. Scotland kind of had it in the bag. It was their game to lose. They had everything that they could possibly have, but I do feel that necessary substitutions weren't made when they started to see that there was a sinking ship, when they started to see things are going down south. Please, why don't you bring on Tom Jordan? Why don't you bring on George Horn? Because these are the kind of players that can make a difference. Tom Jordan alone is a person that can make something out of nothing, and he can bag you 2 tries within a couple minutes if given the time and space. Why don't you use him? He was an unused substitute. Why don't you use George Horn? He was an unused substitute. Come on, guys. Something is happening here. Why is Duhan van der Merwe not starting? I can't understand. Kyle Steyn is probably more in favor right now. But in a game that is so physically it requires so much physicality. Someone like Duhan van der Merwe, he would thrive in chaos like this. This is the kind of games that he would be able to be, to create something. Duhan van der Merwe, he's not the kind of player that's going to be able to create something within 5-10 minutes of coming on. He needs time to cook. He needs someone like Finn Russell to really start playing the ball, to get a couple hits in, and then to really start working. He needs at least a half to be able to start getting into rhythm properly. He's not going to be able to come on. Kyle Steyn is more of a kind of player that would be able to come on with 15 minutes left and create something. Not Duhan. Duhan is not the fastest player. He is a very physical specimen, and he is very good in the air. But you're not going to get the best out of him when you are trailing and you are struggling for rhythm. So I mean, we take a look here and we look into some stats, right? Argentina only led 6 minutes of the entire game. Everything came from the second half, and everybody knows the game is won or lost in the last 20 minutes. 20 minutes, if you can put your best foot forward like Argentina did here, like we've seen South Africa do up against France, the last 20 minutes is the make or break, and this is where games are won or lost, right? We take a look at we take a look at set plays. They're pretty equal. Attack. This shows just how dominant Argentina were when it came down to running with the ball. 215 passes, 165 ball carries, but 374 ball post-contact meters. Now, you got to imagine, Scotland only had around 30 odd less ball carries than what Argentina had, but they've had over 130 more meters post-contact than what Scotland had. They could not handle the physicality. They could not handle the ball-carrying ability of Argentina, and it showed, especially at the try line. I think it was Pedro Rubiolo's try. They were in like the 8th, 9th phase. I think it was the Matera try. They were around like the 9th phase again. So they were really working. They were rucking well. They were running hard with the ball. They were making big hits. And yes, Scotland did defend very well, and a good portion of it ended up coming in the second half. 224 tackles, 28 missed, 89% completion, comparing to Argentina's 161 and 22 tackles missed. So definitely a lot less of a defensive shift from Argentina, and Scotland definitely made a lot of big hits, but they could not handle the power that Argentina had. I mean, we take a look here in terms of tackles completed. Scott Cummings, Dempsey, Schoolman, Gilchrist, Dodge, and Ferguson all on 18 and more tackles. The first time you see an Argentinian player is Grondona with 18 tackles at 7th place. Normally, when you're talking about, when you look at a match and you see tackles made, how many of them are at like number 1? You normally see around the 17-18 mark, whereas Scott Cummings had 24. And yeah, the first time you go down to single digits, it's 18th place. So there was a big physical, it was a very big physical game. A lot of people were, they were fighting for power. Scotland were really, really hitting hard. And Scott Cummings really fought for his life, but it was a little bit too little, too late. They couldn't handle it. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I want to show you guys something, because I do think this was a part on where Argentina won and Scotland lost, because we take a look at Argentina. All of their substitutes were used. The bench is used for a reason. This is not football. This is not, oh, I might bring on a player if needed. These are players that can make an impact. These are players that you bring them on and they are all equally as good. They are brilliant. They can all have an impact. Bring them on. And this is exactly what Argentina did. They brought on 5 players on the 45th minute. We saw Gallo, Marchetti, Pablo Matera, Moyano, and then Carreras all come on the 45th minute. Yes, it was Augustin Moyano who was in the build-up to Montoya's try. He just that absolutely beautiful run. But Santi Carreras, he is one of those players that can really shift the game, and that is exactly what he did from the moment that he came on. As we see here, he converted, he was doing his work, and he was an absolute nightmare. But 5 players on the 45th minute, 2 minutes after Iwan Ashman bagged himself his second try. We then saw Justo Picardo come on the 66th minute with a try at the end of the game. He made a difference. And then we saw Efrain Elias and Ignacio Ruiz really come on, and that was more of damage limitation, right? Damage reduction. They wanted to minimize damage with some big players. Understandable. We take a look at Scotland. They brought on Miller Mills on the 32nd minute. They brought on Ferguson on the 7th minute. But Duhan van der Merwe comes on the 64th minute, and then we see Josh Bayliss and George Turner come on the 70th minute. Nothing from Nathan Macbeth. Why is he still on the field? Why is he still on the bench? We saw nothing from George Horn and nothing from Tom Jordan. This is an absolute disgrace. Why are these players not playing? These are players that can make a difference. These are players that can win you a game when you are behind in those last 20 minutes. Why are you not bringing them on at all? And again, why is Duhan not starting? I want to hear from you guys. Where do you think this game was won and lost? And why is Scotland not using their bench? They have the quality. Why is Tom Jordan not starting? Why is he not starting? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Please like, subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.